Hello, good morning and welcome to the latest Bristol Life Business Club, talking about the new businesses of Bristol, sponsored once more by Beth Moravon. I hope this finds you well. We'll be discussing with 4 new Bristol businesses about why they do what they do and exploring their area. So let me come to the beginning of today's session. We'll be talking with various disparate members of the panel covering visitor attractions, health, food and social distancing and contact tracing. Speaking with Beth Môrafon from VisitMôr, Claire Ladkin from All About the Cooks, Dr. Jacqualine Seckley of HealthHubble, and Ronan Finnegan from SpaceBands. So we'll be discussing about their new companies, how they're faring, what their prospects are, and perhaps a little bit about what advice they might have for others entering this journey of running a new business. Please do send your questions using the Q&A button below. You can ask anonymously if you wish, it'll be named as you like. Do add your name, company name to your question if possible, that'd be helpful. Note that today's Business Club, as ever, is being recorded, will be on our Bristol Life YouTube channel this afternoon. Before a few updates from Bristol Life and some of the stuff we're doing, let's hear from Marty Burgess from our sponsor, Beth Moravon. Marty.
Morning everyone. Hi, I'm Marty Burgess. I'm a corporate partner at Beth Moravon. We're a top 100 law firm with our head office in Bristol. We're a long-time supporter of Bristol Life Business Club, which we've continued to support throughout lockdown. Hopefully it won't be long until we can all get together face-to-face over a lovely lunch up at somewhere like the Avon Gorge Hotel. So startups, we are a keen supporter of startups. We've got a great package and which we can help. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, please do so. And yeah, it's the startups exciting space. There's lots of innovation opportunities for startups in Bristol, particularly at this time. Hope you all enjoy the session. Thanks.
Really good, Marty. It's good to see you, and also good to know that Beth Moravon's in robust good health. I think professional services have had a reasonably good time during this pandemic, and all of us, whether professional services or our new businesses today, we're all figuring out our way forward in the year ahead. And yeah, like you, we really look forward to running those lunches in real life, probably from the autumn now. Before we get going, let's talk about some Bristol Life matters that we're doing. We've got a busy month ahead as we're all gearing up for this new world. Have a look at these couple of business surgeries we're running, April 14th and 21st. Both should be really fascinating. That first one with DataSharp, it's about hybrid working, with working from home bound to continue in some form for many, with working from anywhere being the new hot acronym, even something called WFO, that's office, by the way. What should companies be thinking about in terms of their tech and comms? This is no longer a temporary fix of the pandemic. We need a proper integrated plan. Join DataSharp on the 14th to hear about the practical steps businesses can make. A week later, there's a really strong session with Property All-Stars team led by Close Brothers Property Finance, covering all aspects of property, valuations, deal financing, prospects of Bristol property generally, and as well as Close Brothers, it features MDA Consulting, HBF, JLL, and Juniper Homes. It's a great lineup on the 21st of April. These Bristol Life Business Surgeries are sort of bespoke deep dive sessions showcasing companies' expertise through discussion. Please talk to us about how you might be involved. We can all do with advice and new business. And as Marty says, with Beth Moravon having a specific relationship with new businesses, there's another form of advice from which businesses can benefit. And our business surgeries will be continuing as virtual in the future. The clubs, the sessions today, will come back in real life. These will continue virtually. And of course, they'll have enduring value available on our Bristol Life YouTube channel. Different thing, Crumbs Takeaway. It's our virtual conference for the hospitality sector. And we've had loads and loads of sign-ups for this, really encouragingly. April 19th, so quite shortly. It's shaping up well, great participants. And you can see some of the points we're running through, the practical insights, panel sessions, keynotes, and some heartwarming tales of the good that people do. I think we've all been touched how strongly hospitality has responded in these tough times, particularly when they've had the toughest of times compared with most. If you're in hospitality, please do join, it's free. And if you supply the sector and want to show your support or raise your profile, then let's talk. Bristol Life Awards are held on the 16th of September. Noms are closing pretty soon, on 22nd of April. Please do showcase what you're doing. It's good for your business, good for your teams, and frankly, it's good for you as business owners. It's free and there's great profile for all. But look, also there's a detail there on the side. April 28th is a new separate event called the Grand Reveal at midday. All the finalists will be revealed live for each category, and then on social media on the awards side. So there's sort of more drama for the awards, but it's in this year of all years, we really want to draw attention to the excellence of companies getting to that stage of being finalists, let alone, of course, in due course, being winners. And that grand reveal is sponsored by Bristol Sports, and our thanks to them. We've got a great roster of sponsors for the awards, led by headliners Marsh Commercial. The latest ones, for example, include Total Produce and Thatcher's. If you're an ambitious company or one just seeking to rebuild the business pipeline, just plain proud to be a leading Bristol company, please do consider sponsoring. 17 sponsors already committed this year and several other categories under discussion. Everyone coming together after this year of all years would just be the great best celebration of business in Bristol. Our other prime awards are the Property Awards, Bristol Property Awards, back in real life again at 12th November, Ashton Gate. Many months of marketing, lunchtime and afternoon events, the biggest gathering of property and pro services companies each year, each time. And yeah, sponsorships are available. There's one more thing. I want to let you know, be amongst the first to know about this. EntreConf. Entrepreneurs are central to this city's business destiny and its reputation and all else. New ways of looking at the world, new business models, new services, products, jobs, new opportunities for advisors, investors, financial companies, lawyers, academic institutions, marketing agencies, and so many more. And that's why we're launching EntreConf, the Entrepreneurs Conference. The future is unwritten, and it's up to all of us to write it. It's virtual this year on July 1st, with a real life dinner in the autumn, then a full-blown conference in 2022. It's pitched at startups and scale-ups, and some may even be what are dubbed the future corns, the big breakouts, major value players in years to come. We're seeking to give profound insight and valuable inspiration. It'll help catalyze partnerships, it'll connect all parts of the value chain, it'll celebrate the very special contribution of entrepreneurs, and we're thrilled with the response from a handful of briefings so far. It's quite clear that entrepreneurs generate excitement as well as opportunity. They're good people to be around. And that many will benefit from peer support and professional advisors as well. The site will launch shortly, if not this week, then next, and then the full-on comms will be powering out soon. Please do talk with our teams about options to be involved in speaking to sponsoring. And yes, the future really is unwritten. Bristol Life, at the heart of all of this is Bristol Life, and please look out for our 300th issue at the end of May. A couple of things, this will be a really high-profile issue with several additional gorgeous, gorgeous features, very creative features. A great response so far, and it's bound to be our biggest issue since 2019. And we'll be unveiling our plans for our first in real life Bristol Life event of the year at that same grand reveal virtual event on the 28th of April. It'll be a way for us to say thank you to our advertisers for their support. Well, generally, it's just great to see the momentum building in the city and the confidence rising. Okay, let's do this thing. Let's bring forward our new business speakers from health and food and tech and visitor attractions. First up, it's Beth Môrafon, the founder director of VisitMôr. Beth, good morning to you.
Hello, hi.
How are you doing?
Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, very good. Yeah.
So for those who don't know, and you know it all consumingly, but for those who don't know, tell us what you do.
My name's Beth Moravon. I'm founder and director of VisitMôr, which is a public realm and visitor experience consultancy. So we create magical ways for people to reconnect with natural and cultural heritage. And I started the consultancy at the end of 2019 with 20 years practice in visitor experience creation, which I gained with the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust and its business subsidiary WWT Consulting. So over that time, I've developed over 40 large-scale interpretation exhibits for UK and international clients in the museum and heritage sector. And I've worked with the Wildlife Trust, RSPB, councils, NGOs, and a lot of my projects are National Heritage Lottery funded. I'm also a trustee for the Association of Heritage Interpretation. So I bring all of that wealth of knowledge and skills into VisitMôr, and have been trading for about, 15 months, something like that. Yeah. So
and of those 15 months, with all that wealth of experience, I mean, none of us, of course, could have foreseen what has happened. But how has trading been for you as a new business, this nascent business, despite all your experience in these times?
Yeah, so luckily I had a few months before the pandemic hit, and I worked like hell basically in those 3 months, and I'd thrown everything into building the business at that time. So I'd won a few large contracts up ahead, which was really an absolute blessing. And the scale of my work, the type of work I do, is generally between sort of 3 to 12 months on a project. So and it's many of them have been stretched out as well. So, you know, my goals changed hugely from you know, initial ambitions to actually just get through the year and deliver good work. And so, you know, I suppose I've been a bit more modest with my ambitions this year. But what I've done as well is plough energy into work that's aligned with my values. So I've sort of noticed that the majority of my work has been one with people who've worked with me before, who know of my work and like what I do. So I've put a fair bit of work into supporting charitable projects aligned to the VisitMôr values. And
so, we'll come on to that sense.
Okay, yeah.
Sense of values and purpose, and how that's changed for many businesses, and trying to interpret the landscape ahead. But I want to ask you this question. So take yourself back to, I don't know, middle of 2019, whenever. Why did you decide to set this up?
So yeah, so I set up a little bit before that. I was set up at the end of 2019. I'd come out of 20 years with the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust. And, you know, it was just time. I felt it was time for me to do something new. And you know, I knew I had this wealth of experience. It wasn't, you know, as I said, it wasn't the year I'd anticipated, but I have, you know, I have made good of the year, and I've, you know, delivered some really amazing work. Yeah, so some really nice projects across the UK. I think you know, having worked for another organisation for so long, what I've done is bring the, you know, the values of that organisation, sort of conservation and well-being and all of those values into the organisation I've created today.
We'll explore that a little bit more. For now, Beth, if I can ask you to pop back off camera, we'll have you come back on at the panel session.
Okay.
But it's just encouraging to hear an innovative business, and yes, of course it's not gone to plan, but it's not gone to plan for anyone. But finding your way through and having that pipeline of projects and so on. So good work so far, as it were, and let's pick you up in a little bit as well. So thank you.
Lovely, thank you.
Thanks. Let's have Claire Ladkin to join us, the founder of All About the Cooks, and a very familiar figure at the heart of the Bristol food scene for a number of years. A non-exec of the Bristol Food Network, chair of Bristol Food Connections. Welcome, Claire. Tell us all about the Cooks.
Absolutely. Hello, Greg. In short, All About the Cooks is an online platform which enables people to buy and sell home-cooked food. When I say a platform, I mean think Airbnb and the way that that's enabled people to make money from renting space in their homes. Think Etsy, or Not on the High Street, for instance, where people are selling things that they've made, whether they're small makers or individuals in their own home.
Those are two quite big reference points of Airbnb and Etsy. Is that your scale of ambition?
I think it helps to be familiar, but yes, we are really ambitious for this business. It's there for the taking. This is a market that's ripe to be formalized, actually. People are already selling food that they're making at home on Facebook and so on, but they're doing that without any sort of governance or monitoring of hygiene ratings and things like that. So there's an opportunity there. To be honest, this is something I've been working on for a long time. It hasn't come out of the pandemic, but the pandemic has sparked something around people connecting more in communities and perhaps furloughed chefs cooking their pizzas and selling them to their neighbours and things like that. And there's an opportunity there to make the most of that and to give them a forum to do that in an organised way.
You say that you're not a typical tech startup founder.
No, I'm not.
As though that's perhaps a hindrance, but is it actually a help as well?
This is a business about food and people. The technology is amazing, but it's the thing that makes it possible for ordinary but talented people to make money doing something they love. And also for people to be able to buy that food and to make putting a home cooked meal on the table easier. This business couldn't happen without the technology, but you're right. Usually, you know, a tech founder is somebody who is very techie, and I think I feel stronger as somebody with a background in food and connected with people, and as a home cook myself, to be the founder of this business than somebody who is great at tech but looking for an idea. I think the fact that we've come across this organically is really important to its authenticity, which is core value to all of our cooks.
And let's just pick that point up. How much for you of all that you're doing and why you're doing it, how much is purpose, getting people to eat real food, and how much is business? You know, revenues in, cost.
Yeah, I mean, it's enormous. This is a business with a massive social impact. Our part of the money that changes hands is a very small commission. We need to do it at scale, which kind of comes back to your first question, really, about the company that I'm referencing. We need to do it at scale to make it worthwhile, and we fully plan to do that. This is waiting to happen. So in terms of the social impact, yes, so already in our short life, we've paid £13,000 into the pockets of cooks. Sales are increasing, and that's money that's changing hands around in people's pockets. And a lot of those people are people who might find it difficult to work in the conventional way. They're sharing the food from their heritage. They may well have caring responsibilities. We've been a little bit impacted by the fact that people have had children home from school, but people who have, you know, who are mums and have a talent. At the moment, that's really difficult. If they've got a talent in food, it's an evenings and weekends type of thing. But this does enable them to make their food and sell it to suit them.
And for those, of course, which would be, one would hope, everyone who's intrigued by this, please check the Bristol Life Twitter feed right now, because we'll be providing links to all of our 4 new businesses, and subsequently in the follow-up as well, and also in the intro piece for the YouTube recording of this. Claire, if I could ask you to step away just for a second, we'll have you back on the panel shortly. So thank you, and good luck in the months ahead. Let's now hear from Dr. Jacqualine Seckley, the Managing Director and Founder of HealthHubble. Jacqueline, good morning. How are you doing?
Hello, very well, thank you. And thank you very much for inviting me along today.
Well, thank you for coming. We're all being very polite with each other, aren't we? We'll retain our politeness throughout this. Don't worry. So tell me, tell others what HealthHubble is and why you do what you do.
So HealthHubble is a new platform to help connect people to health and wellness services throughout the United Kingdom and across the breadth as well. So covering, for example, access to GPs, but also for physiotherapy, dental services and holistic services as well, and bringing everything together in one place and making it easier for people to just search and find businesses within their local area.
And it's as to be the fastest growing online resource for the UK health and wellness industry. As objectively as you can, I mean, why has it succeeded? I mean, competitively, is it essentially new or better than what was previously?
Well, I think, it is new, and I think we're covering the breadth, and I think that really helps. You know, we're not separating out lots of different areas of health and wellness. We're bringing everything together. We have a very similar business in a different industry, and that has enabled us to utilize that kind of infrastructure to develop. They have a national global business, and I think that has helped us with a lot of our technology. and understanding how the business environment works in terms of building the website and also with advertising and marketing. So I think that helps. But bringing into that my kind of understanding of health and wellness, having worked within the NHS for 14 years. So bringing those two aspects together, I think that's how we've become so successful.
What on the one hand are the barriers to your growth, and on the other, what are the sort of the rocket fuel elements of your growth if you look forward?
Well, I'd say, I mean, in terms of kind of clear barriers, I don't think there are specific things. I think there are hurdles which we will need to continue to navigate. And, you know, some of those issues are very COVID related. So that's going to be an ongoing issue for many businesses, just understanding the landscape and where things are changing and making sure we can constantly respond to our changing environment in terms of a kind of business sense at the moment. So that's going to be one real barrier, essentially, well, not barrier, but hurdle. And in terms of factors for growth, I think one of the things that's happening at the moment, and I think pre-COVID it was happening, but people really are wanting to take more control of their health. People are understanding that they can achieve better health as well. And I think people want to have more access to solutions. So I think that is a huge factor in actually starting HealthHubble. This is something I'd wanted to do for many, many years. Over 10 years, I'd kind of started to plan HealthHubble. And then actually we had this surge in launching early to help people during the pandemic access healthcare.
Would more money be the, would it turbocharge you or would it distract you?
Now, there are a couple of schools of thoughts, aren't they? I mean, greater investment can actually cause a distraction and kind of hinder just good going organic growth. So I think those sorts of issues really need to be well thought out. I think it's not always a benefit, and I think we're growing really well organically.
Yeah, there's dependent on the opportunity and the scale, there's often talk of first mover advantage, of gaining critical mass, and the need to grow early. Is that how you see your sector, or is it not as sort of directly competitive as that in that way?
I think there is competition, definitely, without doubt. But I think you just need to, in order to kind of make sure you've done everything really well and you've got your foundations, actually, exploded growth isn't always the benefit. You really have to get the foundations right and make sure that all your values are all in place, as well as technically in terms of developing the website.
Yeah. Okay, Jacqueline, for now, if I could ask you to pop away. Back in a few moments, but thank you for that introduction. That's very good. Let's come on to our final new business. And before we bring everyone back for that panel session, let's welcome Ronan Finnegan, a co-founder of SpaceBands. Hi, Ronan. How are you doing?
Hello. Yeah, good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Okay,
well, it's our pleasure. Give us the elevator pitch for SpaceBands. Go.
Cool. So SpaceBands are a Bristol-based company making social distancing wearables. Our devices will log contact tracing, so therefore employers can know which employees have been in contact and make effective decisions when a positive test has been identified within the workplace. And by this, they don't need to isolate the people who are at risk rather than pulling an entire workforce from the workplace floor. So we've been quite successful in our short life cycle. We've had a nine months of life and have sold to the likes of the NHS, the MOD, Amazon, Sony, Travis Perkins, and also just household brands that we're selling to. It's a two-man team. It's myself and a best friend of mine. We've been working sort of day and night, 7 days a week for months and months and months, and fortunately for us, it's paid off.
Could you just step back somewhere in the gestation for a two-man team to go from an idea to dealing with major companies, major organizations as you've listed? How does that happen?
Sure, a lot of sleepless nights. No, I don't know. We went from concept to product within 6 weeks. That was the first prototype. Obviously, since then, the product's evolved and changed, and we're continuously improving it as to fit with government guidance and market demands. But yeah, we've just worked very quickly on a lot of things. We've sort of gone with our gut, and where most businesses are forecasting every single step of the way, but we just go in with our gut time and time again. Now that things are coming, COVID sort of vaccines being rolled out, we're starting to take a more strategic approach. But we just came in, it was all completely self-funded. So I threw my entire savings into it, ran my bank account to zero. And we took the risk, and yeah, it just fortunately paid off for us.
And between you and your partner own all of it, or is there any external investment?
No, there's not. So it's completely ours. We're about to go through a seed round, sort of in about May time, as our product's taking a little bit of a pivot, and we're moving into workplace safety wearables. Yep. So at that point, we'll be looking to take on investors, but for the time being, it's entirely self-funded.
When you talk about products, do you have any product you can physically show us now? Are you wearing anything?
Yeah. So I'm not wearing one. I'm actually the only one. I'm at home right now.
Right.
So no.
Well, have a think about that. When you're off camera, just pop and grab something, and so we've got some sense of the physicality. I want to ask you about.
Yeah, of course.
SpaceBands is clearly sort of super topical, and I'm sure that's the part of the impulse for coming up with the idea. This whole affordable social distancing, contact tracing devices, and so on. Is there a risk to uber topicality? Either a government initiative will supersede it, or the pandemic will lurch onto some new direction which takes away part of your rationale?
I don't think so. I mean, it's sort of somewhat testament to the fact the NHS are using our products, is that the product has a use case. For the most part, it's used by manufacturers and producers or healthcare workers who can't have mobile phones at work. And by this, they can't use proximity of mobile phones and so on. They need a wearable device that effectively has no user interface, just beeps when you get close to someone and stores that contact so the data is necessary. So the data is there when it's necessary to use it. I think even as COVID disappears, there's still a use case for the product, and we'll never go back to civilization where we're not as anxious as we are at the moment about illness. And that's not to say I want society to be like that. It's just the nature of the fact that there will naturally be social distancing if the common cold comes into a workforce in 3 years' time. There will naturally be social distancing if a variant comes out in 2 years, and we're just helping people to be prepared for that. We're the cheapest on the market by far because we want our product to be accessible. We're a third of the price of the nearest competitor, and we've honestly done that as accessibility. We made that conscious decision in the first few months of business that we were either going to come in at a high price point or a low price point, and we wanted it to be accessible to all businesses, not just the elite. And therefore, we made our price as cheap as we could possibly can.
A couple of things on that. As a company, what security in the broader sense do I have that your product will work? In other words, is there some form of indemnification? Do you guarantee that you were able to trace problems? And the other is, give us some sense of indicative pricing. I'm sure it's volume dependent, but talk us through the pricing model.
Sure. So in terms of risks to using the product, there are categorically none. We hold no personal data at any point in time. So the devices will only store the device number and the contact time. So it will say that device number 53 has been in contact with device number 47 and the duration of that contact. So you as an employer would log who owns device number 47, who owns device number 53, and therefore know which devices have been in contact. But we as a company don't hold that data and never intend to. As a result, there's no risk of holding any data breaches or so on. The devices work because you can hear them work when they come in close in proximity. It's a very loud beep and vibrate. We can't hide behind the facts. If someone gets too close, you hear the beep and the vibrate, and naturally you move away. We've made the sound as annoying as possible so that people do move away when they get into contact, because of course that's the use case for the product. In terms of pricing, our device is at £25, £24.99. We actually offer no price breaks regardless of the size of the contract, because we're working as close to cost price as we can, given that we have a mobile app, a web app. We're throwing all the training, everything for the staff. Whereas, as I said before, we're a third of the price of the nearest competitor, the nearest UK company who are providing a service as good as ours. It's £75 a device. And we don't want to compete with a price like that because we want our device to be accessible to all.
New business owners, particularly technologists or those with a technology focus such as yourself, always tend to be optimists. If you're not an optimist, you wouldn't be doing it. But what keeps you awake at night?
Oh, good question. I mean, it's a very tricky business to be in because, especially in the early days, we're managing stock levels against government guidelines. So, for example, if there was news that a vaccine was coming out, our business in theory would have only a couple of months of life. We've since seen the vaccine rollout is slowing, but we're sort of managing expectations along with government guidance, and that's as unpredictable as we all know. We're watching the news and different headlines are coming out all the time. So that's sort of been the biggest hurdle for us. Obviously, we're working with those government guidelines to change the product, but for example, we might change the distancing on the device to 1.5 meters because we've heard rumors that the government are going to change the rules to 1.5 meters. However, by the time we finish doing that developmental change, the government are actually advising it's 2.5 meters, and by that time, the product's going to change again. Or it's a funny aspect. We're working with the government, but although we can't work directly to them because we only hear the news as quickly as everyone else does.
Just, I mean, this is probably a bit too detailed, but if you're in a crowded environment, whether it's, I don't know, Ashton Gate for Bristol City's first match of next season, or if it's the Bristol Life Awards or whatever, isn't it just going to be an awful lot of beeping going on? And how do you disable them?
So the devices will only alert when another device is nearby. So to put it into use case in Ashton Gate, for example, you would need every single visitor to be wearing a device. You can group devices together into bubbles. So if you were to go to the football game and you're with your six of your family, those devices can all be in a bubble, so they won't be alerting when you get too close to your family members because they're in that bubble system. However, if someone comes into that vicinity, the device will alert to that person who's within that 2 meter proximity. And by this, that's what we're being told by the government is the safe thing to do. So having a beep might be annoying, but it's also potentially saving your life in the long run. So it's
yeah, on balance, I'll live with the beep.
Sure.
You'll live with the beep. There are loads more questions, Ronan, but if I ask you to hold for a second, let's bring back our other panelists. So Claire, Jacqueline and Beth, if you could rejoin us, please. There you go. Back in the room. Lovely stuff. So, you know, you're each, of course, traversing these strange times. You have your founding zeal, you have your plan, and so on. Many business owners, new business owners, say that starting a business is the hardest thing they've ever done and far harder than they'd realised. True or not for you? Who can say that?
Oh, radio silence. I mean, it is difficult. There's a lot of things that you don't think you have to keep an eye out on that suddenly become your main focus. I find myself looking at Google Ads at 10 o'clock at night regularly. Like, I wouldn't have expected that to be the case, but you almost become somewhat obsessed with the tiniest details of your growth. So yeah, I mean, it's a whole consuming job as opposed to a 9 to 5. You're thinking about it day and night because if you're not doing the work, no one else is doing it for you. So it's a funny balance.
And for other panelists, as hard as you'd thought, or easier potentially?
I would say I think it's harder than I thought. I think that my experience, my specialty from medicine is emergency medicine. So, you know, on a daily basis, dealing with some really difficult situations, you know, when people are really sick, and actually, so it's a different kind of hard. But it's still, my expectation was that it wouldn't be quite so difficult. And I think, you know, I'd had to echo what Ronan says. There's so many different things to think of. And you do have that kind of, you know, I don't remember emailing myself notes at midnight when I was working in emergency medicine, unless, of course, I was actually in the middle of a shift, but not kind of in bed. But actually now that's something that I do. And it's necessary and it helps me plan, and you need to kind of utilize those moments of really good ideas. So yeah, that, you know, there's different challenges, definitely. You know, many of them are harder.
It's going to be you coming up with the new ideas and the refinements of the existing ideas. There's sort of no one else when you're starting a business, depending on its size. So capture that.
Definitely.
How about for Claire or for Beth? Any thoughts about the complexity compared with the plan?
I'd agree with that. It's the need to be the jack of all trades, and it's extremely difficult to get bogged down during the day. Well, you have to get bogged down during the day with the day-to-day stuff, the things that crop up, and it's only really when that stops that then the bigger issues are the ones that you really need to solve that come to light. But in a way that sort of sparks some creativity as well, because you're so close to what you're doing, you really know what people are thinking, and the way things can develop for the future. But it is having to do everything, and and needing more help. That's the biggest challenge.
So Beth, completely all-consuming for you likewise?
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things is moving from that place where you're really connected to sort of delivering the work, and then actually having that kind of distance view of looking at the sort of long-term goals. And I think that can be one of the hardest things, is sort of having to have that overarching perspective of you know, all that detail of what's actually required in the moment, but actually looking in the longer term. There's a really nice phrase from a business course I've just been doing recently, which is moving between the dance floor and the balcony. Yeah, so I sort of often think of that.
You'll have to help me with that one. What does that actually mean?
So it means sort of getting perspective. So looking at the detail, looking close up at what's actually happening on the dance floor, in the interactions, in what you're developing in the day to day, and then actually moving up onto the balcony, so you can have that overarching look and sort of see more. It's kind of to think about things like innovation and how to kind of project what you want in the future.
And in a similar way, people sometimes talk about the difference between working in the business and on the business.
It's exactly that phrase, yeah. But you know,
let's come on to this point about planning, and the complexity of planning for any new business is just fundamental, but particularly in these times. Are your businesses in any way broadly running to plan, and how much of a detailed plan did you even have in the first place?
Should I do that?
You're amongst friends.
Yeah, so for me, things are fairly well running to plan. The scale of how many projects I've taken on is less, and I've accepted that. But in terms of the growth that I wanted to make, the different innovations that I'm planning, those things are continuing. Maybe they've expanded slightly to sort of pivot for what's required. So maybe looking at how the marketplace has changed, and the people that I'm working with, maybe their teams are reduced. So how can I help them to deliver the same great work with less resources? So things like that. But yeah, I think things look fairly similar to what I'd envisaged. Yeah.
Ronan, did you have much of a plan when you started? I mean, we did, because we were originally going to go through a funding round. Right. In the very, very early days, we were looking for 270, but we ended up just if you like, some forecasting to handle sales. To be perfectly honest, it's media coverage that has helped us more than anything.
Yeah, your line broke up a little bit there. I think we got the gist of it. So just back to the planning point, either for Claire or Jacqueline. I mean, if there's nothing much to say about it, don't say. But how important was that planning phase for you, and has it broadly been on track with that, or entirely pivoted away from it?
For me, we planned to launch in March last year, and we postponed because of the pandemic. It felt too risky, so I have raised some money on investment. The Bristol launch is a pilot. We're testing the concept here. It is the best place probably in the world to do this for all sorts of reasons. But one of those things, I wanted to test whether people want to buy home cooked food, whether they want to sell it, but also if there was an appetite for future investment. And the tech business is reliant upon that, because the technology is very expensive and you have to create that at the beginning of its life. So that was the biggest thing. So I had investment, but I didn't want to burn through it during that really unknown and unpredictable phase. So we ended up launching in October. Since then, the numbers have looked much the same, except it's happened differently. So we'd calculated in terms of so many cooks selling so much food. And in fact, it's been much more organic than that. And we've had some cooks who've been completely nailing it, and some who, for one reason or another, just simply aren't getting orders through, which is something that we need to learn from. What we've been delighted with is the growth that we're seeing this year, which probably is less than, so since things settled for 2021, we've seen 30% growth of sales month on month. Actually, March was 50% up on February. So we're hoping that that's the way things will follow in the future. But so the numbers are about where I thought they'd be, but differently.
It's I mean, it's such a sort of volatile time for you each in all your business sectors, that the volatility that there is in the very short term, it will become normative eventually, and the trends will emerge. And it, you know, whether it's 50 or 30 or whatever percent, the true underlying enduring trends will emerge presumably. Jacqueline, anything on this this planning against?
I mean, for us, we ended up launching far earlier than we'd intended, and we actually we're planning to launch in the middle of last year. And the reality, actually, it may well have taken us much longer. So it could have been towards the end of last year. And in March, we decided to essentially turn our website on and launch early. So for us, it's brought everything forward. And I think that has helped us with our growth, more organic growth, but I think that's really helped us actually. But in that sense, we're also kind of trying to plan ahead around where we think the pandemic is going to go, where we think the waves will happen. And that's been really important for us, really kind of understanding how will people behave, what will people be able to access. And I think, you know, similar to Ronan, you know, the government guidance changes really quickly. And so you have to be prepared for that, and kind of you can plan it to a certain extent, but you need to give a good confidence interval. Well, actually, what could happen? Where are we going to go if this happens or if that happens? So it's been interesting. Planning is really important, but we can't, you know, it's very difficult to give definites, I think, at the moment.
Different form of planning with very good intent. Advisors nearly always say it's never too early to start thinking about your exit. First of all, do you agree? And then secondly, are you thinking along those lines about potential exit at some point? That stumped you. Ronan, you dive in on this one. I reckon you've got some thoughts here.
Yeah, I mean, to be totally transparent, yeah, we've got forecasts already. We're looking at about 15 million in year 3. So yeah, we're looking at exit plans already. I'm in the middle of doing our financial forecasting now for a seed round. But yeah, I mean, I think you'd be silly not to look at an exit in the early days. It doesn't mean necessarily have to take an exit at a certain time, but people will always ask for those numbers. And if you have them ready, it just shows that you're prepared and ready for those next steps.
It must be inherently difficult. It's a bit like a sort of rocket in the ground. You get a tiny detail right or wrong at this stage, and the outcome is so divergent in such a nascent business. How do you actually run that process financially, either you or other colleagues?
So I mean, for me, it's me who's running all those numbers, which puts a lot of stress on the back. But yeah, I mean, it can take every turn, and we're probably more reactive than most businesses because it's such a COVID-related product. Yes, we're pivoting in the short term, but nevertheless, our whole business entity at the moment is COVID-related exclusively, and that will be around in 2-3 years' time. But it's going to change dramatically to the landscape that we're seeing now. And of course, we want it to disappear as next person does, because I'm a young guy who wants to live life again.
So Claire, Jacqueline, or Beth, does exit thinking at all loom on your horizons?
Yes, for us, it's definitely there. And I suppose core to that is the ability that the social impact that might be gained by the ability to accelerate growth at some point in the future, yes. And to give a return to our investors.
Yeah. Same question, and by all means, be completely stum if it's too intrusive and you've got your plans, you don't have to reveal them. I
think exit is something that we considered. It's something we know we would want to think about, but at the moment we're not planning for that. I think we're still very much growing, and so we're not kind of planning our exit at this stage.
And I guess so much is vested in you personally. It's perhaps a different trajectory in terms of business destiny.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I've thought about, but at the moment that's not foremost in my mind. I'm looking at different additions to the business and different areas for growth, that's where I'm primarily focusing. So yeah, it's not what I'm thinking about right at the moment. Do
you think one of the effects of this pandemic, it's you know, the tectonic plates have shifted in every single way, societally, personally, financially, health terms, everything. But do you think one of the effects is that people are more receptive to new ideas, whether new businesses, new business models, or new funding approaches?
I definitely think that. Yes, I agree with you, Greg. I think people are open-minded to much more than they were before, and think things have been shaken up, and it's been in some ways quite refreshing to see people looking at things differently and behaving in their everyday things that they do, and shopping, I suppose, in our case, has definitely been shaken up, but everything has. And look what we're doing now, that we're doing things differently than we did before. And
in that vein, to the extent that lockdown has made everything local, has that, or slightly more narrow cast perhaps than previously, has that accelerated your individual plans and opportunities?
I think the fact that we've looked at our communities more, we are all about connecting people within communities. When you use the website, you put in your postcode and you find who's cooking what near you. That's the point of it. And I think that it's drawn a lot more attention to how we want to support local, and placed value on our on experiences over transactional commoditizing of food in our case.
And again, into this area of purpose for you individually as founders, people, you know, developing essentially new businesses, but also societally, do you think this the shift to at least potentially the more thoughtful, slightly more collective values, will they endure? And if so, how might that benefit what you're doing?
I mean, I think one of the great things about working from home is people have broke down that work-life balance a little bit more. People are reacting in a workspace more on a personal level than a sort of a corporate personality. And it's because people have had to work in dressing gowns and t-shirts instead of suits all day. But you can see it just when you're bringing people on the phone, people speak to you more like a person than they do in the workplace, and they're trying to put on this front that this is an important person in the workplace. But which I think that's great. I think that's probably here to stay, because once people break down that personality boundary, things just happen so much more fluidly. And yeah, I think it's going to stay, and I hope that it would do.
How about our other panelists? Do you sort of buy the argument that this is a one-time shift and fundamentally things are going to be different going forward, which provides opportunity, or will we all over time go back to broadly what we were doing previously?
I mean, I think for us, I think globally people are thinking more about their health. That's an obvious statement, but I think that will stay. I think that we would just in so many ways we think about more, you know, how we exercise, how we eat, you know, our connections, you know, how we socialize, our mental health and well-being has had a huge focus. It needs more probably, but I think yes, there is a huge shift, and I think it is here to stay. I hope it's here to stay, but I really do think it is here to stay, but nationally, but globally as well.
Yeah, likewise. I think that people's interest in the natural environment, people's interest in wildlife and connecting with wildlife has really soared, particularly locally, and so yeah, that's something that is part of what we do, and we'll be, you know, making the most of it in the local environment, definitely.
But when you look at your businesses, and some of course are only a few months effectively underway, but when you look back, if you've got time to look back, perhaps you haven't, but if you were to look back, what might you have done differently knowing now what you know? All right, whilst you're pondering that, no one's going to leave you on that one. Let's come to another point here. There's a phrase that it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It's the opening of a Charles Dickens novel. So which is it for the pandemic and starting new businesses, the best or the worst time?
I think for me personally, I think if I'd have been sort of maybe two or 3 years in, that might have been much more challenging. And actually, you know, being only a few months in when the lockdown happened in the UK, actually, you know, because being a startup, you know, things, the outgoings are modest comparatively, and sort of if I'd been maybe a year and a half in, or, you know, taken on more teams and things like that, that could have been much more challenging. So I think actually for us as new businesses, it's you're working within your means, you're responding to the situation in a much more flexible way than if you're sort of a bit more unwieldy, perhaps. You know, lots of big businesses have gone under. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
There have been times I've noticed where it feels like you're wading through treacle because everything's so difficult. I did find working from home, and actually I'm mostly back in the office, I'm at home today just because it's a bit quieter. But that's been quite a challenge, keeping track of all the little things that are going on remotely. I find that quite difficult, and to get a sense of momentum in something new. We've also had the challenge of the fact that people haven't been until last week socializing at home. That's made a difference to us, and as I mentioned before, the homeschooling definitely affected our availability of some cooks to join us as they planned to. On the other hand, we've had furloughed professional chefs who have been able to sell food and make some money for themselves. You know, perhaps they're worried about what will happen when things do go back, and what happens in the future of the industry in some instances. So it's been a real mixed bag. So I couldn't say that we've done well out of it or that we've really struggled. It's just been a bit different and challenging at times, but possible.
Let's come back to the genesis of the ideas that you and you know, perhaps other colleagues had at the start of these businesses. Did you think schematically, I'd like to create a business in X area, or more intuitively, what about if we were to do? Which was your approach, and multiple other approaches as well? How much was schematic?
Do you mean me individually or anybody?
Anyone.
Okay. For me, it was wouldn't it be great if moment, and I didn't set out to try and invent something or create something, but as I started getting into this idea, I realized that actually I was really well equipped to be the person to take this forward, and once that seed got going, then there was no stopping it.
How intuitive, how schematic? I mean, Ronan, was yours a sort of schematic look across and decide to do something approach, or was it a, you know, that classic light bulb? What about if we were to?
Yeah, not at all. I think it was a right place, right time moment for us. Both myself and Harry have been in have had various businesses in the past, and when we sort of bashed heads and came up with the idea for SpaceBands, we realised we were in the right place at the right time. There was no one else doing it on the market. We knew that we had the skills to do it, and I was willing to put all of my funds into it to race the business through. And then obviously once we started trajectory, we then took a more schematic approach. But from the, as I said earlier in the talk, for the most part, we were just rolling with the punches in the early days and taking risks that were high risk, buying £5,000, £10,000 worth of stock and just hoping it would sell. Unfortunately, it did.
What were your individual options? I mean, did you think schematically for any of our four panelists? Did you think, well, I could either do that or do this? Did you have alternatives, or was this the one game in town for you?
I think for us, this was it. It was the one game in town because we've got a sister company that has a similar business with a similar business model in a completely different industry. And again, they're kind of more of an international company. They are an international company as opposed to a national company. And it was a question of that would work within health. And I think it was a question of bringing that across and actually, yes, this is what we need to do. So those were kind of how HealthHubble came about, really.
Others have alternatives or things you ruled out and decided to do this instead?
For me, I'd been doing fairly similar work, so it was, you know, it was a matter of sort of transposing that kind of business model that I'd been working within within another consultancy, and you know, creating my own. But now in particular is where I'm looking to sort of add in. So having had a year and a bit to kind of get a bit of ballast through that model. I'm now looking to sort of introduce, these new sort of innovations that can support clients in different ways. So, I think I had a fairly strong idea of what I was coming in with, and there wasn't really anything else, you know, that was competing for what I wanted to do with the business.
You certainly, as a quartet, seem very level-headed in your approach to things, and of course, you know, I suspect there's an element of the swan on the surface is doing that, and underneath is the furious, the crazy hours, late thinking, and of course changes to plan. When I mentioned earlier about our own EntreConf event and about the importance of bringing advisors together as well as entrepreneurs such as yourselves. Where did you get advice, any of you, whether it's friends, family, or professional advisors in the early stages, or was it entirely self-generated?
I asked everyone I could think of to ask just as a sounding board, but also because the technology particularly was a new field for me. So I had the learning curve has been very steep, actually, and you know, sort of conquerable, actually, I feel as well. I do feel we've got there, but there were challenges, and I did ask, and people are, if you ask people for advice, they're very generous with their time and a cup of coffee.
Brackets, when allowed.
Exactly.
When allowed, when permitted. Ronan, who helped you on a sort of advisory basis early days?
So I had a few businesses prior to this one, so I sort of had quite a good footing to build out this venture. We had some real help from Business West, actually, who are Bristol based. Who helped us with some, it was a government-backed consultancy in the early days to just help us with our growth and moving into international markets, which was really beneficial. I can't recommend that highly enough. And otherwise, it's just because our product helps other businesses. Fortunately, businesses wanted to help us. So lots of times we were getting sales as word of mouth sales without any sort of push to do so, just because the product was potentially saving lives. And once business owners saw that employees liked it and it was keeping them safe, naturally they were telling their friends who were also business owners, and so on and so on and so on. And it just sort of snowballed.
The words spread. So, it's good to give a shout out to Business West, an organisation which does so much to support businesses in the area. Just talk us through very briefly that process. Did you have a particular contact there who recommended a particular approach, or what?
Not at all. So just in the early days when we were trying to work out what we were doing with funding, I was applying to as many grants as I could possibly find, like sort of doing grant applications till 3 o'clock in the morning, night after night after night. And then I came across this Business West and contacted them via the contact form. And just, we were, again, it's right place, right time, because our business was so sort of reactive. Anyone who we were asking for help was sort of getting back to us within a couple of days or a week, whereas had we been a food and drink brand, it might have taken 2 months before we heard a response. But every time we'd ask for help, people would either give us help or send us in the way of someone because they knew that we needed to act quickly. So yeah, it's just been, tail of the whole business has been right place, right time a lot of the time.
Good stuff. For Beth or Jacqueline, any early stage important advisors or advice which you had during that time?
Yeah, for me, I had some initial advice from Brave, who are based centrally in Bristol, and then just recently I've been doing this course with University of Bath, Be the Business, and it's called Productivity Through People. So the last 6 months I've been doing that course, and I managed to get some funding from West of England Combined Authority, so it's part funded by them, part funded by myself. And that's been really, really valuable, actually. It's really insightful speakers, it's kind of changed my way of thinking a lot about the business. So I found that really, really useful. And then whenever I've needed help, I've sought out, a lot of support online, or I'm with the Federation of Small Businesses. I found them really helpful, lots of courses through them. So I've sought quite a lot of help. The other thing I found really useful, actually, was I've worked with many of my subcontractors for years and years, and I sought advice from them, who they went to for insurance, really practical things, but people who are in comparative lines of work who I'd worked with already, I had a lot of advice from, and so that's been really useful.
And Jacqueline, I guess quite a lot of the advice would have come from within the business, because you mentioned the sort of parallel area. Externally, any advisors you wish to share out?
So we have worked very closely with our sister company, and I think that's really helped. But we often have kind of very specific technical questions, where we kind of really seek out another business to help us with that, and talk to experts in those areas. But it's largely working alongside our sister company, I think, that's really, really helped.
Yeah. Well, we're going to close on advice with this last question. You've each made the point about the different ways you've had advice, whether it's WECA, the University of Bath, FSB, Business West, internal colleagues, partners, suppliers, etc., and people being very helpful in their advice and always willing to give it. But what single piece of advice would you each give for those considering starting a new business or in the very early stages of it? And don't say don't. That don't is not an option.
Just trust in your own ideas. If you fully believe in it, someone else will as well. You just got to sort of back yourself until someone else joins you.
Wow. Okay.
I do wish that I had a co-founder. I think that would make a big difference. So I suppose if there was anything I would have done differently, or a bit of advice, I would have perhaps tried to do that. There have been times when it's felt quite isolating. I'd still be interested to do that, but it's finding the right person. One of the great things about taking investment is that you do get a source of advice and mentorship there, and that's been really valuable.
Yeah, investment isn't just money. Investment is expertise.
Very collaborative. Yeah.
Yes. Jacqueline or Beth, a single piece of advice for any nascent entrepreneur or startup?
I would say one of my biggest piece of advice really would be to kind of really try and focus on solutions and not problems as such, and that that there are ways to get around most problems, and just to really reach out for help to kind of find those solutions as well, and that will kind of help you get over things like the surprise announcement that the government come out with, or just navigate this difficult, uncertain environment. Really is just be very solution focused.
Yeah, there's more of the sunny optimism of entrepreneurs. It's great. Beth, your last thoughts?
Yeah, so for me, I think the most valuable thing I can bring is for people to build their relationships. So I think in business, there's often you're so focused on the details, or trying to deliver everything, and actually sort of it's the relationships that you build that really get you where you want to be. So I think not losing sight of those relationships and focusing on those.
Well, we're going to end now. This hour, as ever, has flown by, and from all of us, I'd like to thank all of our speakers today, and founders of some really promising new businesses. We clearly wish you well in the months and years ahead. So Beth Môrafon from VisitMôr, Claire Ladkin of All About the Cooks, Dr. Jacqualine Seckley of HealthHubble, and Ronan Finnegan of SpaceBands. Thank you for watching this, and also if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to dwell on some of the details that people have brought forward. Also, of course, thanks to Marty. There's Marty joining us briefly again from Bevan Britain, our sponsors, as ever, of the Business Club. Thank you also for your support for Bristol Life overall. Do look out for our next business surgeries later this month with Data Sharp and Close Brothers. Also that special Crumbs takeaway, all this is in April. And then of course, EntreConf, which has come up a couple of times this morning, our major new conference for entrepreneurs on July the 1st. The future really is unwritten, as we've been hearing about today. Good luck to all of us in the coming months. This has been a Media Clash production, and this has been the latest Bristol Life Business Club. Bristol together, always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.